Hello, and welcome to week 4. We're almost halfway through our 8-week session now, and you should have submitted the outline for your significant artist report already. And this week, the rough draft is due for that as well. In addition to the significant artist report, you have your first field trip reflection to submit, and that is for the museum visit. For this video, we're going to be discussing sculpture and art installation. Sculptures might be familiar to you already, but installation art might be something new. So we'll take a look at the PowerPoint and see what's in store for us. As always, the PowerPoint slides are on Moodle. So let's start with some terms. A sculpture, an artistic form in which hard or plastic materials are worked into a three-dimensional art object. An assemblage is constructing or adding existing shapes, objects, or materials to one another in a method other than welding to create a whole structure. So you take other pieces and put them together. A bust in sculpture refers to a portrait of a person that includes the head, neck, and part of the shoulders and breast, usually but not always mounted on a base or column. A cast, to reproduce an object such as a piece of clay sculpture by means of a mold. Also, an artist may choose to cast from real-life objects or parts of a body or the entire body. Mold is a hollow or negative container used in the process of casting to give its form to a substance placed and allowed to harden. Molds can be made of plaster entirely or in rubber with an outer plaster jacket. So molds are what you use to make a cast. Relief in sculpture refers to any work that projects from the background. Reliefs are classified by degree of projection. Relief sculpture is distinguished from sculpture in the round. So relief sculpture it's kind of like a two-dimensional object in a way, and then it's flat, but then there are certain parts of it that project outwards, just a little bit. They come out to give it some interesting depth and texture. Let's look at some important sculptures next. The bust of Nefertiti by Thutmose. This is painted limestone. It's a beautiful portrait of Nefertiti, the wife of Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten. 1345 BCE. And despite its age, it holds up. The colors on this and the detail is still quite vivid. Terracotta warriors. Terracotta is basically a type of clay material that's hardened. You can find terracotta pots at Home Depot if you want to put your plants in them. This is a collection of sculptures from China and depicts the army of the Emperor of China. And there are, 8,000 soldier statues, 130 chariots, and 670 horses. And if you look closely at the statues in this picture here, they are all different. They are not the same. So someone took the time to make 8,000 different soldiers, and that is quite amazing. And this is a recent find too. It was only discovered in 1974. Venus de Milo is thought to depict Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love. It's a marble sculpture about 6 feet 8 inches tall, and it's known for its missing arms. And that's pretty common for statues of people. Because if the arms stick out, they can get bumped, or even just the sheer weight of it can, over time, can degrade and come off. Statue of David by Donatello. This is a bronze statue. And this is David just after he has slain Goliath. And if you notice, Goliath's head is down here on the ground, serving as the base of the statue. And this statue caused a scandal when it came out because David is nude except for his boots. And it's so lifelike that it was a little bit disturbing for people. We weren't used to seeing such detailed work. Here's another statue of David by Michelangelo. Michelangelo, right? You have to do the hand gesture. Or Michelangelo, the American version. Again, this is a large statue of David, and that's his slingshot right there, by the way, over his shoulder. He's waiting to take on Goliath. There's a lot of detail in here, muscles, veins, and this contrapposto in his pose, or this asymmetrical form in the way he's standing, and the shoulders slightly away from the hips. It's not straight up and down. Another statue by Gianlorenzo Bernini. And this one, very different from the other two. This is more of an action statue, much later, right? 1600s, the Baroque period. So there's a lot of detail. Look at the expression on his face. He's exerting a lot of energy. The body is twisted in a form of movement. The Thinker by Auguste Rodin. Now this one, this one was originally titled The Poet. It was meant to be part of a larger composition called The Gates of Hell, and was actually renamed by other people who thought it was similar to Michelangelo's sculpture Il Penseroso, The Thinker. Unique Forms of Continuity in Space by Umberto Boccioni. This is a 20th century piece, and it's futurist in design and style. The artist was interested in dynamism, form. There's a lot of movement and energy within it, stance, motion, this wind-swept look to what's possibly clothing. And he was also interested in deconstructing solid shapes, so we don't have typical shapes. They're altered in different ways. Fountain by Marcel Duchamp. In case you couldn't tell, yes, that is a urinal. This is from 1917, and he submitted it to the Society of Independent Artists for an exhibition in New York, but was curiously enough rejected. The original sculpture is lost at this point, but Duchamp was commissioned for a number of replicas in the 1960s. The Little 14-Year-Old Dancer by Edgar Degas, 1922. Degas was known for his statues. He had more than 150 that were found in his studio after his death. And most of them were of dancers. Man Pointing by Alberto Giacometti. And this was made for an exhibition in New York, and he did it in one day. And it was originally intended to be part of a larger composition with another statue, with his arm wrapped around the other one, hence the arm kind of out like this. There would have been a second statue right there, but it was ultimately left just as the one. Sky Cathedral by Louise Nevelson. And this is an example of an assemblage. What we have here are various boxes stacked against a wall, and each compartment is filled with wooden scraps, things like moldings, dowels, spindles, furniture parts, and then coated with black paint. And it's interesting, right? When you put those all together, you don't really see the individual pieces. It looks like one new piece. They kind of become one, and they're unified through that, especially with the black paint on there, I think. Smoke by Tony Smith. And this is a very large structure, 24 by 47 by 33 feet. And it's the largest sculpture that Smith ever did. It was conceived as a work in metal, though there are some wood versions that were made. And it has this open lattice work kind of structure to it, like trees or scaffolding. Balloon Dog. Now, this is not actually made out of balloons. I don't think it would last very long if it did, because my children have gotten balloon animals like that, and they last for a couple days, but they don't last nearly as long as this. It's made of stainless steel, and the idea was it's a series in which the artist Jeff Koons was interested in transforming this playful child's party favor or balloon into this monumental sculpture. There are other versions as well. There's a blue, magenta, red, orange, and yellow. Maman by Louise Bourgeois. Over 30 feet high at the Guggenheim. And we see the spider right here, and she's protecting this sack with 26 marble eggs. And it's quite a frightening statue in a way, but also vulnerable. There's a level of vulnerability with it because of the legs that are so thin and skinny. It's almost like this statue could just topple at any moment. Cloudgate by Anish Kapoor. And this is one of his most well-known pieces. It's in Chicago's Millennium Park and was inspired by liquid mercury. If you haven't seen mercury before, it's the kind of thing you might find in certain thermometers or in your thermostat. And it looks like this. It's kind of like a T-1000 Terminator 2, like that liquid metal Terminator, if you ever saw that one. This is not liquid metal, but it's inspired by that. And people didn't think that he could create such a seamless structure. I mean, this picture is kind of far away, but it doesn't look like there are any seams that are visible in it. And that's pretty cool for such a large structure. The Physical Impossibility of Death in the Mind of Someone Living by Damien Hirst. And this actually contains a preserved shark in formaldehyde. Rapture by Kiki Smith. Visiting the artist was seeking to look at the subject of human and animal relationships. She compares her sculpture to concepts of resurrection and rebirth in stories like Little Red Riding Hood, Raphael's The Birth of Venus, and similar depictions. A Subtlety by Carl Walker. So in Williamsburg, there is a place called the Domino Sugar Factory, which was built in 1882. And by the 1890s, it was producing half the sugar that was consumed in the United States. And this sculpture is 75.5 feet long and 35.5 feet high. The sculpture is white, a mammy as sphinx made out of bleached sugar, which is a metaphor on reality. And Walker was taken with the history of the slave trade in America and sought to comment on things like who cut the cane sugar and who ground it down into syrup and who bleached it and who sacked it. Three Siblings. Yi Hwan Kwan is a Korean artist, and he's represented by the CMAY Gallery, which represents local and Asian artists. And no, this picture is not stretched out. That's what they look like. Next, we're moving on to installation art. So a few key terms here. An installation is a mode of work in which art elements, sculptural or otherwise, are installed in a location, either responding to the site itself, called site-specific installation, or not. Installations often occupy an entire room or gallery space that the spectator has to walk through in order to engage fully with the work of art. Environments, an alternate term for installation art. Environments are mixed media constructions or assemblages, usually designed for a specific place and for a temporary period of time. Site-specific art refers to a work of art designed specifically for a particular location and that has an interrelationship with the location. So now we'll look at some examples of some important installations. Yard by Alan Caprow. This is an early example of installation art from 1961. And they have this backyard of a gallery filled with car tires and objects wrapped in black tar paper, and visitors were invited to climb on it and move them around. The Dinner Party by Judy Chicago. Her goal was to introduce the richness of women's heritage by creating this monumental work of art. It consists of a series of entryway banners and heritage panels, heritage floor, and acknowledgement panels. Everyone I Have Ever Slept With by Tracy Emin. So it's a tent with literally the names of everyone she ever slept with, but not necessarily in a sexual sense. Slavery by Carl Walker. Now, these are a series of paper cutouts with a somewhat cartoon-like cuteness to them, at least at first glance, but upon closer look, you get to see a little bit more of this dark and hellish world of sex, slavery, and sadism, all under a crescent moon with dripping Spanish moss. We have dualities of victim and predator, strong and weak, black and white. Untitled by Doris Salcedo. In this installation here, in Istanbul, there are approximately 1,500 wooden chairs stacked between two buildings. And it's supposed to address the history of migration and displacement in Istanbul. That is a lot of chairs. I wonder what the volume of that space is. It's got to be pretty big, though. And it's hard to see, but how do they keep them all in place? Is there a net? What is it? I can't really see. I see these cables here, but those don't look like they would keep anything in place. Interesting. Überorgan by Tim Hawkinson. So this is kind of a one of those mixed media things that was mentioned earlier. Not only do we have these various shapes, but also music that gets played through here. There's this scroll of paper with these markings on them that's read by a machine with light sensors that activates these different horns that play pitches. And it has music from hymns, pop songs, and improvised themes as well. Sunflower Seeds by Ai Weiwei. This has more than 100 million tiny handmade porcelain sunflower seeds. And the idea here was the artist had these fond memories of when he was growing up. And he said that even in China, if even the poorest people, they could share sunflower seeds as a treat with their friends. And to make this installation, he hired an entire village that was in economic trouble to help make these. So not only do you have this installation art, but it's helping an entire community in the process. The Infinity Room by Yayoi Kusama. So only 2 people at a time can go in, and then they close the door behind them. And they stand on this narrow catwalk, and they're surrounded by mirrors on all sides. So it just goes on and on into infinity. The Event of a Thread by Anne Hamilton, commissioned by the Armory, not the Army, but the Armory, references the building's architecture as well as individual encounters and congregational gatherings that have animated its history. So it's a multi-sensory event where you have readings and sound and live events that all occur within this field, and there are swings that people can also sit on, and it's a really engaging experience for the viewer. Intersections by Anila Koyam Aga, winner of the Art Prize from 2014, uses light from inside this box to cast shadows and transform the space around it. So the box has all these designs, Islamic in style, representing Islamic sacred spaces. And then the light projects outwards and casts all of these incredibly detailed shadows on the wall. So those are some examples of both sculptures that have been around for quite some time, and then installation art, which is a bit more recent in terms of art history. I hope you found this fun and interesting. Be sure to download the PowerPoint slides so that you can view those, because again, with the identification quiz, you'll be asked to identify sculptures like that, and you'll want to know who the artist was that designed it. Okay, so spend some time with those, and I don't make some flashcards if you need to. You can put the title on one side and then the name of the artist on the other, and that might be helpful for you. Okay. That's a ways off though. That's in week 7. So we have a few more weeks for that. As always, if you have any questions or comments or just want to chat, let me know. Send me an email or we can set up a Zoom session as well. I'm happy to meet with you and go over anything you might want to talk about. Until next time, enjoy the rest of your day and I will see you later. Bye-bye.